Hi, I'm Hayley. I identify as a dyke, and that's really my primary, like, when people ask me how I identify, that's how I identify. I'm also trans. I'm a trans woman, which is relevant, but it feels a little bit more a part of my identity now than it has in the past, but what makes me queer? All the sex I have is really queer. Partially just by necessity, because being trans like introduces an element of gender fuck into everything, but also partially just like how the way I have relationships and the way I fuck is just not, it's not like some mirror of like heteronormativity with girls. It's like wanting to build our own kinds of relationships and have our own kinds of sex and like just really play with things and have our own kinds of hair. And yeah, part of my queerness is like in how I look, or it comes out in how I look, where I try and like have a very put together but kind of punk, kind of shocking in a certain way. Shocking but still pretty. I'm still going for something that's very aesthetic, but I have a lot of patterns that don't match strictly, but sort of form a texture. Everything I wear is really textural. My hair is really textural. And some of that is like just finding things that look really hot on my body rather than, and like hot on my personality rather than things that like are supposed to look hot on everyone, where everyone is like kind of skinny, mostly straight white chicks. Which is how fashion, like, that's sort of what the fashion world is centered around. Femme could be a political identity for me. I guess I haven't thought of being femme as political, but it is. It obviously is. Especially being femme and a dyke. There's both from within the lesbian community and from outside it, there's a certain amount of femme invisibility, which isn't as, I haven't felt that as prominently in a lot of communities I move in, which is maybe part of why I move in those communities, but I felt it elsewhere for sure. And so just being that and like bringing that to a space is important to me. So I do identify as a feminist, I think, although honestly, that identity is a lot more tenuous than it has been, because I'm not really that active in feminist circles. I don't like go to conferences or do theorizing, in part because it hasn't been, my experience with it hasn't been all that like rich or giving for me. Like, it's a really good foundation, and it's been really important in shaping how I interact with the world, but it's like I sort of want to run off and make art and like make hot queer porn and not, I don't want to say not worry about like problematizing everything, but not problematize everything all the time. That said, I think there's a lot of power in, or that's not quite true. There is actually a lot of power in, I don't want to say traditional femininity, but in the trappings of femininity and in the way we exalt and kind of fetishize that, which when you're in like the heteronormative world and you have to like live that all the time, it can be extremely limiting and like it's hard and draining, and it's in a sense not real power because it can be taken away like that. But that doesn't mean you can't take that and sort of use those things as totems to summon some of that power in like some magical ritual that apparently I'm referring to now. I fantasized about fucking an aerialist while tying her up. So like tying her up with her silks and fucking her. Mm-hmm. Like party in my room. That's what I would say to 1 million attentive queers. Yeah. She loved the smell of them and the taste. She loved to run them between her fingers and her lips. She loved them in mesh and lace. She He loved all kinds of girls in panties.